Buying your first home is never easy. Today, I want to walk through one of my favorite transactions from this year. I had a client who was looking to purchase his first home. He was still living at home with his parents and wanted to A, get his own space, and B, move closer to work. He pinpointed the area he wanted to be at. We ended up submitting an offer, lost during a highest and best call, waited about a week, and a week later, after touring other homes, of course, we got a call back asking if we were willing to proceed with the original offer we submitted. We had to navigate through some difficult findings during the inspection, but ultimately we got him to the closing table. So let's jump in. As we started touring, I was able to get a quick understanding of what was important to my client and what wasn't. He really wanted a space for a home gym. He wanted either a garage or a basement for that. Something perfectly move-in ready wasn't super important to him, but the right neighborhood and area definitely was. We essentially found the right home pretty early on in our search. The downside was, of course, if you like it, probably someone else does too. So we ended up being in a multiple offer situation. We submitted an initial offer and then gradually increased our offer a little bit, actually twice, still not being the final offer that was selected. What was interesting though is we then continued looking at other homes. We had essentially just figured this one was done, and that home had gone under contract and we were going to move on. And then a week later, we got a call. Apparently, the buyer had issues with their financing, so they wanted to know if we were willing to proceed with our original offer, which I circled back with my client. He was very excited. This was really the home he had set his eyes on. So we went ahead and went under contract with that offer we had originally submitted. What I think was really interesting was that was really just the beginning of this transaction. There were a couple other hoops to jump through, which I'll get into shortly, but my client at this point in the transaction was happy, and I was excited for him because buying your first home is a big deal. So getting your first accepted offer can really feel like a big weight off of your shoulders, and the touring is hopefully done. As I mentioned earlier, my buyer was very well qualified, so he was putting 20% down, so he didn't have to worry about PMI or private mortgage insurance. He also was able to get an appraisal waiver, which was also very important in this transaction because essentially he was qualified enough and the lender had underwritten the loan to the point where they decided if he was purchasing a property under a certain amount, they didn't need to worry about the appraisal, which made this transaction a lot easier. So overall, that definitely helps the, quality of the loan, the strength of your buyer, and the terms that you can offer can definitely help, especially when you're in a multiple offer situation like this. So I think that did probably put us in that second place position compared to that first buyer who maybe just ended up offering more. But ultimately, we're the ones who were able to get this deal closed. So sometimes having the right team in place with your lender and your realtor and submitting an offer with strong terms can help you beat out other offers just based on the quality of that. The inspection, of course, is where we ran into some potential problems. So my client opted to have radon testing, a sewer scope inspection, as well as a standard home inspection. As a first-time home buyer, I think it's very, very smart to pay a couple $100 more, get everything possible inspected, and really know what you're walking into so you can budget for future repairs and maintenance. As we got the inspection report back, we found a variety of problems. There was mold in the attic, improper ventilation in the attic, likely causing the mold, elevated radon levels. The sewer had root intrusion, as well as no clean out. So overall, as a first-time home buyer, this can be a bit scary. There's a lot of issues that, you're looking at when you read this inspection report, and inspectors are great, but they can, of course, get people a little bit scared or make people want to walk away from a deal. So having an agent who can walk you through that and really kind of give you confidence in what each problem is, relative costs to fix, and what maybe isn't necessary to fix now but is good to keep on the radar is always important. So of course, that could be a fairly comprehensive list to some. The nice part is that we were able to get credits to address some of these issues, and I was able to walk my client through what likely costs were to fix some of these, as well as get quotes from licensed professionals and contractors who deal in these sorts of things. So, for example, we found elevated radon levels. Of course, that is a health concern and not something buyers should ignore by any means, but the good news is getting a radon mitigation system is a relatively manageable expense compared to something as drastic as, foundation issues. Another really unique part about this property is that the city of Wheaton actually has sewer reimbursement programs. They have it right on their website that they're committed to reducing sewer issues in the community. So they have 3 programs. The first one is their residential sewer backup prevention program. Basically, they're saying the city will reimburse 75% of eligible repair costs up to a maximum of $8,000 if you reroute your basement plumbing to an overhead sewer. This property did have basement plumbing, so that was an option for my client. There was also a sanitary sewer line reimbursement program, which replaces your entire sanitary service line to fix breaks in the system. The city would reimburse 65% of eligible repair costs up to $13,000. And then there's also a foundation footing tile disconnection program where they disconnect non-conforming direct connections to the city's sanitary sewer system, and the city will reimburse 100% of eligible costs up to $5,000. So, of course, sewage can be an expensive cost, but having these options available, having a contractor come out, take a look, having the sewer scope report really made this a lot more manageable for my client. He's definitely going to be taking advantage of these programs, as I think anyone probably would if they lived in this area. So I think that made this a lot easier for him to swallow, and it allowed us to proceed with the deal after getting the credits, after understanding what the sewer reimbursement programs were, and kind of what the costs would be to mitigate a lot of these issues. So to wrap this up, I think there were probably 3 main takeaways I would take from this deal and this transaction. Number 1 is when you find yourself in a multiple offer situation, it's easy to lose sight of the end goal. A lot of people panic, but I think it's important to keep yourself level-headed. Don't lose panic or don't lose sight of your end goal if you end up in a multiple offer situation. Submit what you feel comfortable with. If the deal pencils out, great. And if it doesn't, know when the right time to walk away is, because you never know. You might get that call back. And if you do, hopefully it's an offer you still want to proceed with. Lesson number 2 is that inspections don't always kill deals. Sometimes they're great insight and leverage points, and other times they very well could kill a deal unless you know what you're doing. So in our circumstance, we were able to do a lot of research, get quotes from various contractors and companies, as well as figure out that the city actually had reimbursement programs for a lot of the issues that we thought were bigger ticket items. So what, could have very well been a deal killer ended up being something we were able to proceed with and feel comfortable with, knowing what our options were and what the likely costs would be. And then I think the third lesson, and probably the most important one for anyone buying a home, but especially first-time home buyers, is that there's no perfect home. Every home is different. Every home is unique. Every home has its own positives and negatives. I think when you go to look at a home, you have to do it with 2 different lenses. One lens of what does this home need repair-wise? What maintenance issues does it have? Is there anything that is a big ticket item that maybe I don't feel comfortable proceeding with or I can't afford in the future? But then you also have to look at it from a more optimistic standpoint of what is good about this home. What could I update that I would be excited about updating? What characteristics does this home have that maybe other homes I've seen haven't? And then you can make the most informed decision. If it still feels right after you walk it, after you tour it, maybe after you sleep on it, it's probably smart for you to make a game plan with your agent and your lender and your team that's involved in the transaction to make sure it makes sense to move forward. And if it doesn't feel right, definitely don't go for it. But again, some people hold out looking for that perfect home only to realize that it doesn't exist. And in hindsight, maybe one of the homes they've seen in the past could have been a good fit if you had the right lens on when you were looking at it. So I say all that because if you're thinking about buying a home in the Chicagoland area, I'd be happy to help out. I think this story is a good story for people to learn from, take lessons from, and use going into either buying your first home or buying your 10th home. A lot of these lessons learned and the things that you run into when you are in a real estate transaction come up. They are not uncommon by any means, but having the right team in place can really help you decide if this transaction makes sense to proceed with or not. So if you're looking for a home or looking to sell a home, feel free to give me a call.